welcome to 3D.sk, human photo reference for 3D artists and game developers. On this site you can find thousands of images, from studio photo reference to street photo reference. We also have a selection of animals on our site. We have some costumes, we have weapons, armor. We also have 3D scans of bodies and heads, clothing, animals, all the aforementioned above, and 3D maps and textures. Hello and welcome to this episode. In this episode we're going to be covering the hair, but we're just going to be starting off in Zbrush and making an export of this first. So I'm going to go to this mesh here. I'm going to duplicate it, move it down the list, and then we're going to dynamic solo it, and we're just going to Z remesh this and make it quite low topology. So I'll probably want to make it like maybe, let's see what this is, 94,000 is a bit too much. So I want it about maybe 10,000. See if we can get that. Okay, so now we're back and we have a lower poly version of our mesh that we can use. It's going to divide it up to 61,000 so I can draw something on it. And what we're going to basically doing is, let me just move this reference over to this screen. We're going to be using Jeff Bridges, if you know him, as our hair. So our hairline isn't the exact same as his, so if you just want to take a screenshot or anything, feel free to do that now. But I'm going to have it off to the other side, so it's out of the way. So I'm just going to try and do his hairline as best as I can by using the standard brush. Firstly, I need to fill this in with just white. Using a standard brush with symmetry on and black, I'm just going to draw a rough shape of his hairline. So from what I can see, it's kind of like this, then like that. It's making a line almost. See how deep it goes back. Okay, it's about there. Then it kind of just comes into straight, basically. See how similar that is to what we did before? Almost similar, but not quite. Not quite the same shape. Feel like I might have done it a little bit wrong, looking at it again. So let's just Control Z. Trying to get this quite accurate so it helps me later on. Hair doesn't go that far back. Maybe a little bit more forward than that. So if you want to just rub out, you just get the white brush and just kind of do this. So that's looking a little bit better. Feel like this is a little bit higher up, like that. And then it just kind of goes into his sideburn. Turn off symmetry and just kind of edit this out a little bit. Looking at it from the side view now. Feel like this bit's a bit higher up. So let's do that. Feel like when it comes up, it goes kind of above his eyebrow. About there, maybe? Bit higher than that. Kind of like so. This is just so we have a reference of the hairline. And his parting, so we can draw in his parting now, which I'm trying to see, which I can see quite clearly on this one. It's kind of right around here. And it goes back to about here. Of course, you're going to get the back part. So we can kind of make layers now of what we're going to do with the hair. Say that the most bottom layer is there. So basically we're going to get the main part of his fringe coming over here, and the other part coming back here. And then it's just going to kind of carry on from there. Trying to see the back of his head, which I can't see very well from these images. But now we can maybe draw in some for the beard. So you saw the beard reference that I had. So I'm going to try and get that. So it's kind of like so. Then he's got a big beard. Doesn't quite come up that high. He's drawing lines here as reference for everything. Trying to get it the right shape. Say about there. Doesn't have to be perfect. And then from here it's pretty simple. It's just going to be basically kind of like that. To the bottom of his chin and here. Then you're going to have it kind of going down. Well, we've got the rough shape in there. Do want a bit of his top lip showing through, so I'm just going to kind of do that. So we know what's going on. Okay, now that we've got this, we can do a quick Z plugin, UV master, turn off symmetry and unwrap. Of course, we need to delete the lower subtool. Unwrap. Okay, now that that's unwrapped, let's have a look at the UV map by just going morph UV. It's not perfect, but it'll do for our purposes. This is not going to be the final UV or anything, it's just for our reference. So texture map, create, new from polypaint, clone texture, go here and we can go export. Just put it in import export for now. Save it as a JPEG and just go hair reference. Just save that out. Okay. And then we need to, of course, export the mesh. So we can go import export and go hair reference. Before I did this, actually, I may have to flip it, so I might just make a flipped version just in case. So if I go to texture, flip vertically, and then export it again as hair reference flipped. Okay. Now we can jump into 3ds Max, and we can start importing, hopefully. Import export, hair reference or high reference. So it's imported the texture automatically for us, which is nice. Didn't think it would do that. Sometimes it doesn't. So what I want to do here is I want to rotate this 90 degrees. And then I can rotate it back in Zbrush, which should be fine. So we've got our reference here, which is nice. So now we can move over to the hair, creating the hair plane. So first of all, I'm going to create a line. I'm going to go to keyboard entry. I'm going to go add point. And then 200 millimeters along the Y, add point. A bit big at the moment, but that's fine. I'm now going to go to a plane. And we're going to create this. Give it about that width, and obviously we want it to be 12 length segments and 2 width segments. So I'm just going to quickly go open the transform toolbox, make this minimum Z, and then I'm going to move it up so it's the same height. I'm going to hide this for a sec because it's getting in the way. Just in case I move that, let's select this and just hide selection. I'm going to go to my line when it eventually lets me click on it. And we're going to divide this by 3. Now we have enough segments. Now we can go to this. And let's just do a little test. So I want to, before I move on, I want to make this a first. So this is the first segment. And I want to use a WSM path deform to this. So you go pick path, click on that, then you go to Y, move to path. You're going to see it rotate it a little bit, but that's fine. So now that we know that it's working, let's just Control Z all that. Let's go back to when it was just a edible poly. Let's select all the outer vertexes, holding Control. Getting a bit hard to see at the moment. And let's just move it slightly back. You want this to be fairly flat. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to use a taper tool. So if I just turn on the amount a little bit so I can see what's happening, I want 2 results. One of them should be like this, which is not the one I want to do first. The other one should be like this, which is the one that I want. So you want to kind of move it down like so it creates like a triangle at the end and it's fairly flat at the other end. You want to make this slightly curved the opposite way, so it kind of curves into that shape a little bit. just slightly. So if you look at it from the top view, it should look something like this. You don't really want it like that. It's more something like that. So that's perfect. So now let's add another taper, and we're going to make it smaller at the end. So if I remember correctly, it was just along the Y. To make that slightly smaller at the end, like so. We've got hair pieces, collapse all, yes. And now we can use our WSM modifier, our path to form. Pick path, click on the edge, go to Y, move to path. Then you'll notice it's flipped it, which is fine. That is what I actually want it to do. That's why I created it the opposite way round. So now, when you select these vertexes, let's first just make them smooth. When you move around these vertexes, it's going to follow the shape of it quite nicely in any way. We also notice it's going to move up that way, but if I do it on this side, it's not going to. That's very important. So this is our first hair piece. So if you want to move them, you just want to move it as a whole. So select both of them and move. So now you've got a working hair piece, and we can clone this to make different hair pieces. So let's just make a quick clone, but first I want to go back down to editable poly. Now you're going to see it move position, but it's fine. Just going to go on unwrap UVW. My UV editor is on my other screen. Just going to go on here. I'm just going to make a quick pelt map out of this. And I'm going to straighten it out. Just give it a little bit of a relax. And let's scale it down. So if you imagine, this is one of our hair pieces. I'm just going to leave that there for now. Maybe scale it up a tiny bit. Just going to collapse 2. Just go on this. And now you should see that it's gone back into shape. But now we have UVs on it. So if I put a checker on this, it should work pretty well. Just to check that it has done the UV. If I just put this on here, you can see that that's fairly even. Let's turn up the tiling a little bit. Change it to 10 and 10. So you can see that it's completely even and nice, and that's important. So I'm just going to put a blank material on it for now. So what we want to do now is we want to make it the right size. So unhide all. So our head's all the way over there. So just select this, move it a bit closer. You can even rotate it by 90 degrees so it's facing forward. Anything you do in this mode will not affect anything from your WSM because you're moving them as one unit. So this still works completely fine. But you can make sure that you're not messing with anything ever so often. So let's just make this the right size first of all. So if we just scale this down, move it closer to the head, and take a look at our reference, which is here, see that his hair is about medium length. So it goes from about here to here. So maybe we can use this as a reference. So I'm just going to rotate it on this axis and then on this axis. and just scale it based on that. So from about here, it went kind of round his head to the other side. You can see here. That might need to be a little bit bigger. Maybe about there. And maybe we can make it a little bit wider as well. It should be fine. Okay, let's rotate it back to the front. Let's move it over here. Let's say that that's our first size. That's our kind of main hair piece for styling. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to check that no problems have been made by doing that, which they haven't. As you can see, move this back, like so. It makes for a very smooth experience of doing the hair. Now, there's two methods of doing hair, at least in my methods, and that is one using Zbrush, but it's a little bit more, you don't have as much control over it, but it goes a lot quicker in the first place, but then the UV takes a bit longer and it's a bit tedious. This method takes more time at the start and less time at the end. So it's just whichever you prefer. Better to do it this way because you have much more control and it looks a lot more professional. So let's just make a quick copy. Gonna make this 2 copies. And you can even start making some groups. So if I just go to here, select, display, edit. Right click on here and we should be able to get some layers. Okay, here they are. So let's create an empty layer. That's not what I wanted to do. Where's my layers toolbar? Should be somewhere in Layer Explorer. Here it is. So I want to get rid of this one and get this one in there. Just gone onto my other screen. Because I've got 2 screens, it can be quite difficult to kind of get it in place sometimes. There we go. I'm just going to bring this out a little bit. And we should be able to create new layers here now. Create new layer. Create layer. Here we go. So I'm just going to get this and just kind of move it into the default. I'm going to rename this hair part 1. I'm going to get both these and I'm going to move it into there. And I'm going to create another layer, create layer, and create hair part 2. And this is just for organization. And then we're going to go to here, we're going to get these 2, and we're going to move them into there. So this is going to be hair part 2. So we can even change this up a little bit. So maybe if we look at the reference, he's got some shorter hairs and a bit thinner hairs that we'll need to use for styling. So let's do that. So maybe we make this a little bit smaller, a little bit thinner. this is going to be more kind of little styled hairs, or say a clump of hairs. This is going to be like main hair pieces, and then this is going to be more kind of clumps. Then we can even create another duplicate, create a copy, go to create layer, if it lets me, rename hair part 3. Let's get both these, let's move them into hair part 3. And now this is going to be more kind of a very thick one. That's going to be mainly used for putting down big chunks of hair, probably at the back more. And we can make this a tiny bit longer. So we're just kind of going down in size right now. We can make another one over here. Create layer. And we can rename this hair part 4. Then we can really scale this one inwards. Scale it down a little bit, and we can have this as like more looser hairs, little hairs that are like straying off. But fairly substantial hairs, such as if we go to the reference, like this hair here would be this, like very thin hairs, but then hairs like this, stray hairs, is what we're going to do next. If you select them and you create a layer, it'll put it to the new layer. Hair part 5. And I'm going to make this very thin and quite small. So we're just kind of going down in size here. So now that that's done, I want to go back to this one. Let's just move this one to the end. I'm going to go back to this one, and I want to create an kind of an exact clone of this one. The only difference being that this is going to be, oops, this is going to be the same hair shape wise, but the texture will be different. So if you imagine these two, it's going to be like one hair might face this way a little bit, and then we're going to alternate between them randomly, if you know what I mean. We can create one more clone. And we can name this hair part 7 and have it as another kind of clone, if you know what I mean, but with a different texture. Hair part 7 now. And that should create enough variation for us to be able to create convincing hair. And all of these will also have UVs, but you'll have to change the UVs to different places so we can get one map of the hair. So what I want to do now is I want to end the episode very soon, but I just want to show you that each of these have still have their controls in place, as you can see. We even go to some of the smaller ones. These will also have controls in place, so you can control them, as you can see. You can also, using the WSM, don't be so scared, because we can stretch them later on. We can twist them if we like. You can also rotate, which might be important later. You can go percentage. So there's a lot of things that we can do. We can also use modifiers later on, but mostly we'll be using the vertex and the WSM path deform modifier to edit these hairs. So I want to finish the episode up here creating these hairs. At the moment they all have the same UV space, meaning that if I create one hair, it's going to copy over. It's going to be the same hair on each of these, which is not what we want. We more want it to be more like, so if I remember correctly, this is super flyaway, so very thin hairs that are just about to fall off. This is kind of a bit thinner. This is maybe just a bit thinner kind of groups of hair. And then these are the three main groups, and then this is kind of underlayer kind of thickening, if you will, mostly the back of the hair. So yes, I'm going to end the episode here, and in the next episode, we're going to be firstly sorting out the UVs, getting each of them their own UV space, and then after that we will be moving into creating at least some rough textures that we can work with while placing it on the head, so we know how it's going to look like from the start. So I'll see you in the next episode, and we'll still be using this reference I've been using. We're going to do the hair first, and then I'll probably move on to the beard after we've done the hair, as there's a lot of different lengths there, and we'll probably have to do the same thing again, but for the beard. So I'll probably not show you how to do this again, but I'll show you what sizes I used and what texture I'm going to use differently. Welcome to the end of this tutorial. Feel free to comment with feedback and suggestions below, and also comment on what you would like to see in future videos. Thanks and goodbye.